So, I know that many of you understand the difficulty of following Dr. Marcia McNutt. Several of you who know me might have said this is sort of like brains and beauty come before BS. I'm going to try to dissuade you of that opinion. The second thing I will tell you up front is that I went to the Naval Postgraduate School, came to several performances here in this theater back from 1989 to 91. So it's very strange being on this side of the theater. I would suggest that if someone had taken that, I would have bet thousands of dollars on the likelihood that I would have ever been up on this stage, almost 30 years later, unfortunately, 20-something years later. Most of my professors, including Jeff Padwan, probably would have bet a lot of money that if I had been on the stage, it would probably have been as a character in a Neil Simon play and not talking about oceanography. You were wrong. The third thing I will tell you is just like Renee, Rick Spinrad, I also worked for NOAA because remember, part of my job as oceanographer and navigator of the Navy, I was also the Navy deputy to NOAA. So I'm also a former NOAA employee. And I'm still looking to collect that paycheck, by the way. Thanks. Okay, so I politely put a phrase up here on this slide, and which I'll talk about in a second. But first of all, the Consortium for Ocean Leadership, most of you know what that organization is, but based on my conversations yesterday, a lot of people don't. It goes back several decades. Its roots are to the Joint Oceans Initiative, JOI, which was the International Ocean Drilling Program Organization, started back in the 70s that Dr. McNutt talked about. And so its roots go back in there, and then another organization came along in the 90s, started by Admiral Jim Watkins after his tours with Secretary of Energy when he eventually led the Ocean Commission, and that was core of the Consortium for Ocean Research and Education. These programs were joined back in 2007. The first director, Dr. Bob Gagosian, he was followed by Sherry Goodman, and then myself, starting in this January. A couple points is that not only do we manage the International Ocean Drilling Program for many years, we also manage the Ocean Observatories Initiative, OOI program, as well as the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative. So several major programs, but more importantly, I represent 90-something members who are academic ocean leaders, academic ocean science institutions, aquaria, and several industry members, many of whom are here today. And we are a leading voice of ocean science and technology in Washington, D.C. And that's my day, night, and never-ending job, seemingly. So, what do we not understand? That's a sort of a polite way of putting something I might have heard from one of my professors back in postgraduate school is, what don't you understand about this equation? I heard that a few times, unfortunately. But I did make it through. So where did I come up with that? It started, not there. Oops, yeah, there. Stop. So Marcia talked about our oceans last week. I was there. A couple things happened. One is got to hear our president, and this is not meant to be a political thing at all, but he got up and talked for 20 minutes. You can watch it on YouTube. If you haven't, I really encourage you to do so. Time better spent than the 2.5 hours I spent watching The Revenant on the flight out here. After hearing Leonardo DiCaprio at the same event, I said, maybe I should watch that movie. 2.5 hours, I'll never get back, just my personal opinion, but great actor, by the way, and a great ocean champion in many ways. But anyway, the president went off script and talked about his personal things about the ocean, and he was optimistic. So we know the ocean health, we know the issues we have, but he was optimistic and said, we can solve this problem. Now, he simplified it and said, back when I was growing up, we had this problem with the ozone hole, and now the ozone hole is closing. So what did we do? We figured out a better way to make deodorant and to solve the problem. Though the ocean problems are a little bit more complex than that, we all know that, but I appreciated his voice of optimism at a time when I just feel sometimes so overwhelmed with pessimism about many things about the ocean. So then, Friday after the Our Ocean was over, I got to go to a public event at the French Embassy. It was included a panel of a lot of very senior people, including Dr. Sylvia Earle. Everybody knows her, and she is certainly no stranger to Monterey. At the end of the panel, the moderator said, I want each of you to wrap up your thoughts about the ocean in one sentence. Most of them did it in about 5 sentences or more. But Sylvia said very simply, she said, we must explore, understand, and care for the ocean like our lives depend on it, because they do. that stuck with me, and I'm going to use that since I'm going to use it a lot, and I told her that. She just thought about that off the cuff. So the word understand, going back to this slide, is what do we not understand? And that's what I'm going to talk about to this crowd a little bit in the eyes of my role as the head of ocean leadership, representing ocean science and technology. First of all, I'm going to tell you that in the balance of our understanding, it's all about security. As we look at our planet ocean, growing population from 7 billion to 9 billion by the middle of the century, we all understand that each and every individual is tied to the ocean, relies on the ocean for so many things that they may not even realize. So as we see that happening, we see the various threats to our ocean, to our world, to our structure, our socio-political structure, so many things, and I'll talk about a few coming up. How do we balance that to make sure that ourselves and our posterity, that we maintain a secure ocean and a secure world around us? And that's the balance that I see, that's the challenge that we face with our ocean today. First of all, I'm going to talk about national and homeland security a little bit, something my background in the national security community certainly. And we think about the ocean, the maritime environment, and some great words by Admiral John Richardson, the current Chief of Naval Operations and a graduate of the MIT Woods Hole Ocean Institute graduate program in ocean engineering. So he says, in the last 25 years, the maritime activities has increased fourfold. We look at things that are going on around the world, and he said, we've been resting on our laurels in terms of maritime security and maritime superiority since the Cold War. I mean, think of who could have shot a missile out of a submarine 20 years ago. Think who's doing it now. Think about things that are going on in the ocean, building new islands. What does that mean? What's happening in the maritime environment? Think about the Arctic opening up and military activity up there. So I suggest that the understanding of the ocean, which for many, many decades, and if you listen to Admiral James Watkins, who said that oceanography won the Cold War, certainly ocean science, ocean technology has won many wars and has given us a lot of peace and security. We need ocean science and technology to help us maintain our maritime superiority and be ready to win or to hopefully thwart any future potential conflicts. And that's what I ask partially of the community that's here today. As you look at the science and technology, think back, go back to where we were in the Cold War and think about the threats that we have today, which are so much more complex, no less threatening really. And how can ocean science, ocean technology, ocean knowledge, our understanding of the ocean help those? Not to mention the infrastructure of our own country, our own homeland that is threatened in the future, and certainly Marcia talked about that. What about the rest of the security things? Global security issues that threaten us based on the ocean now. The food security. And by the way, we passed the Food Security Act in Congress, signed by the President just about 3 months ago, I think now. 200-something pages, a lot about how we're going to deal with international food security. It gave a lot of support to ongoing programs, very good programs, but unfortunately the word ocean and the words aquaculture, mariculture were mentioned in that act 0 times. So when we think about food, water, our energy, economic security, these type of things, they rely on our ocean. Even our health, as Marcia talked about, is related to the ocean. And our very existence in some of the small island developing states, sometimes I refer to them as small island disappearing states. The very existence of population is related to what is happening in our ocean and our ability to understand that. So that's when I say, what don't we understand about the ocean, and how are we going to get the understanding that will allow us to make sure that we do have a future, and I can be optimistic, and we can all be optimistic about it. But they are great opportunities. And as I walked around the exhibits yesterday amongst the couple of hotels trying to figure out what was where, I salute everyone, and certainly the MTS and IEEE folks for putting together a great program. But there are opportunities out there to be able to make a difference in all of these areas. Whether it's looking at how understanding of coral biologic processes can cure cancer, Understanding the large, the giant amphipods in the deep trenches can help cure Alzheimer's. Efforts going on. These type of things can help. The possibility that our ocean can actually feed everyone if we care for it smartly. We use the knowledge, we understand what's going on in the ocean, we use that knowledge to provide food security for the entire world in the future. Not to mention energy, not to mention water. All these things are great opportunities, and I argue they are also economic opportunities for the blue economy, which I talk a lot, I hear a lot of talks about blue economy, new blue economy, and they always get me excited. So I ask a lot of people, what are some of the new blue economy ideas? I hear everything from tourism to aquaponics and all these type of great things. But I'm starting to realize that every piece of our economy is part of the blue economy. And we need to understand that. And we also need to make sure that the understanding of how this relates to our economy is communicated to everyone. It's not just about the workforce in the ocean, science, and technology. It's the total workforce. The total population of our country needs to understand how important the ocean is, just like they do understand how important the weather and the atmosphere are. But there are great opportunities out there. I'm excited about the opportunities that I've seen here, and I think our future and the optimism lies on this, and it relies on the people who are in this audience who are presenting posters and talks yesterday and for the next couple of days on a lot of these initiatives. So in the end, it comes down to this. It's about, again, our security, balancing threats, risk. How do we do that? I argue that in the ocean, we do it through a value chain that starts at data, and it goes through action. One better way to look at this is like this. It's data going to decisions. Decisions that are made, policy decisions, which I hopefully get involved in, not hopefully get involved in, which I'm able to influence, and all of us are. But it's actions that are taken, and the understanding are the first three tiers of that. That understanding also includes certainly the ocean prediction that Marcia talked about. But it's still that we got to have all the, we understand that. The ocean science and technology, without this, we can't get to the right action to create that future that I talked about. And that's why this value chain is so important, and it's so important that we champion all the individuals, all the institutions who are doing this part of this value chain, and then we create, like Marcia said, what if we had the people in the decision loop were actually graduates of ocean science and technology programs, or former leaders of ocean technology industry organizations? Could we then start to maybe break down some of these stovepipes, misunderstandings, and disagreements? I think it's a great way to look at the future. I appreciate that. Another thing that I say in terms of understanding the ocean is if we want to know the sea, we have to go to sea. And we've been doing this for years. We've been doing it with ships, we've been doing it with everything else, but I will tell you, we must go to sea, but we can't afford to just do it on ships in the future. We must go to sea in very, very new ways. That's why I'm excited about the autonomous systems that I see here, by the new technology, whether it's a hexacopter or a wave glider or an ocean glider or a sail glider, whatever it may be, these things that are going out there to allow us to get that information. The incredible work by people here also to look at how to fuse all that information and how to really turn this into a future ocean that we understand, that we can afford, because it comes down to really three things. It's where do we get the money to do this? It's where do we get the understanding of the people and the policies that will do this, and then how can we do a better job of working together as a team, breaking down the stovepipes between agencies, breaking down the stovepipes between academia, and really forming a team that goes after this ocean problem. That's why I salute MTS and IEEE for bringing together the science and the technology. And you do a great job of that. And we've got to do a better job of this more and more in the future. But I tell you, we got to go much farther than that. So when we go to the Our Oceans Conference, when people go there, we've got to bring in more of the real technology and science and industry into those conversations. The energy people, we got to bring them into the conversation. The chemical producers and all these people that are out there who are involved in ocean things, we've got to bring them to the table, break down these stovepipes and work together as a team, because we don't have the resources to just rely on the government to build big ships. and have big programs. It's just not going to work. It's not going to solve the problems. They're way too big. And then you get to the international front and the complexity goes up a couple orders of magnitude. This is the challenge that we face. It's a challenge that all of you face. But I think when you go around again and look at the presentations today, look at the panels, look at the posters, and talk to the young folks, a lot of them who were not even alive when I was coming and watching other things on this stage back in 1990, 1991, I think you also got to be optimistic. So I'll say the challenge is for us. It's for all of us as we stand here. And I think hopefully I've been able to give you a little bit of an idea of why I believe that it's not about what we can't do, but it's understanding what we must understand to take care of our ocean, to make our oceans healthy, but also the thing that can actually sustain us as a human race and all the rest of the ecosystems that surround us on this planet. So thank you for being here at Oceans. Thank you for the opportunity to share just a brief few thoughts with you.